Hello, higher monasteries, and welcome to the next section in your USA topic, which is section number 2, US political institutions and government decision making. So in this section, we're going to discuss a wee bit on the political institutions in the USA that exist and how the government makes decisions. Ultimately, we'll go over what your main essay would focus on in this section, but this section in particular, you'd be focusing on the powers of the president, so decisions that the president can make and the decisions the president is unable to make, so limits on his power. So when we're referring to government decision making in the USA, the government is referring more to the president at this time. Okay, so to start with, I want you to think about how much do you know about the different political institutions in the USA. So how does politics and the structure of politics actually work in the USA, and can you name any and describe how they work? So have a think about that just to start with, and then we're going to go over the different institutions that exist in the USA. So, the USA, how the political institutions are set up and how it's broken down. So we have the Constitution of the USA. So that's the Constitution, ultimately almost like the set of rules that the USA needs to abide by and is run based on. So the Constitution splits the political system in the USA into three parts. So we've got the legislative, the executive and the judicial. Now, the legislative is split into two parts again. So we've got Congress, so you've got the House of Representatives and the Senate there. Now the House of Representatives and the Senate are made up of people from the two main parties, usually the Democrats and the Republicans. And the US Capitol building, which you will have seen recently in the news, that where it was stormed recently by Donald Trump supporters, that is the main building there for the legislative. So that's where the House of Representatives and the Senate sit. You then have the White House, which is the executive part of the political institutions that exist in the USA, and obviously that is the president and the vice president, who are the most common people there. The president now in the USA is obviously Joe Biden. And then you have the Supreme Court, which is the judicial part of the US Constitution, how it's set up in terms of its institutions. And the Supreme Court, you have the Supreme Court judges there as well. So that's the highest court in America. There is no higher court in America than the Supreme Court. So that is how it is broken down. Now we'll go over, there's also different levels. There's state level in America, there's federal level, then obviously we have the Constitution with the three main levels of the USA there. Now, to start with, just for an introduction for you here for the US political system, what I'd like you to do is to read over this page in your booklet and complete activity 1. Now, this is just an introduction to the US political system, how it actually works. You'll see here in this section, we're going to analyse how the different institutions in the USA actually work and evaluate what institutions dominate decision making in the USA. So if you read over this page in your booklets and complete activity 1. Okay, and the questions in activity 1 that you have here, it says take the heading in the US political system. So describe why the US political system is structured the way it is today. So think about what I mentioned about the US Constitution. Make a copy in your jotter of the structure of the US political system, so just a sketch to show how it looks. And then I've said there, add in pictures and use your phone to add an extra detail about each of the three branches. For example, who's the president and vice president. So you can use your phone to add in some detail there. So you want to pause the video at this point to complete activity number 1. Okay, a key part of the USA in terms of politics is something known as checks and balances. Now, the US Constitution includes a series of checks and balances to reinforce the separation of powers. Now, checks and balances are ultimately to make sure that no single institution in the USA dominates too much. So it's all about keeping tabs on each institution, so to say. So keeping checks and balances on each other. Now, an example of checks and balances in action, what you have here is Donald Trump's bid to end Obama-era immigration policy. And this is from the 18th of June 2020, this story. Now, what this is all about is Donald Trump tried to end Barack Obama's immigration policy, but the US Supreme Court ruled that President Trump's bid to do this was actually not allowed, so they ruled against it. So this is an example of checks and balances in action. So Donald Trump, as president at this time in the executive branch, has tried to do something, and the Supreme Court have stopped him doing it, so they've kept a check on Donald Trump here. And that just explains a wee bit about checks and balances. Now, the jobs of each branch in the USA. So we've got the legislature, which is Congress, so they make the laws in the USA and distribute money. We've got the executive, who is the president in the USA, so they ensure the laws are carried out, so they execute and administrate the laws. And we've got the judicial, which is the Supreme Court, so they interpret and review the laws that exist in the USA. So think of it like a restaurant, to say. So you've got this picture here, so the Power Bake Off. So the legislative would be the chefs who would be gathering all of the ingredients that were needed for the recipe and writing out the recipe. So that is legislative, so that's Congress there. So giving you the material to do what you need to do to provide you with the power. Then you've got the executive, so the president there, so putting all the ingredients together, making and proposing new laws. And then you have the judicial, so it's the Supreme Court, so they'd be the ones trying the food, so they'd be looking over the laws to see, ultimately, are they suitable, are they allowed, are they lawful, ultimately. Now the whole point in this is for each branch to keep a check on each other, so no one branch can dominate the other branch, so power is supposed to be distributed quite evenly. So, next page in your booklet, you've got Principles of Government, so it talks about the separation of powers. So, it also mentions a wee bit about checks and balances to make sure that no one branch dominates the other. So, your next activity is for you to complete these questions for activity 2 in your jotter using the information from this page in your booklet. And here's the questions here. So, take the heading Principles of Government, explain your own words what checks and balances actually are, so there's a bit more in your booklet on that. And write down some of the ways that each branch of government can keep checks and balances on other branches, so to make sure that no one branch dominates. So again, you may want to pause the video at this point just to complete that task. This picture here just gives you a bit more detail about each branch and how it's broken down. So again, we've got the US Constitution there. So we've got the executive branch, which is led by the US President. So the US President, as we'll find out, is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. He's head of the US federal government and recommends laws to the US Congress. The legislative, led by US Congress, so we've got the Senate and we've got the House of Representatives there, so they pass laws, they approve budgets, but only the legislative Congress, only they have the power to actually declare war. And we've got the judicial, which is the Supreme Court, so they declare government actions unconstitutional if they feel that they go against the law, which is also what the Supreme Court did when it came to Trump's attempt to change the immigration policy. In America, America is also broken down into states, so you also have state laws in America as well. So, states are run by the state governor, and you've also got state governments which exist as well. And you've got state congress and state court, which exists in other states as well. You've got things like taxes, so taxes can be different levels in different states, and in some states in the USA you also have the death penalty as well. So you've got laws at state level, then you've got laws at national level as well in the USA. So certain laws will be, or will exist in certain states and maybe not exist in other states as well, like the death penalty for example. So that's how the USA is broken down. Okay, so what we're going to think about next is powers of the president. So we've got here the most powerful man in the world, question mark, and that's obviously the current president, Joe Biden. Now this section, what we've just discussed here is more of background just to the US political system and how it actually works. So you won't really be asked a question on anything to do with like the institutions in the USA or how each institution works. That's just a bit of background for you there, so please don't worry about getting too bogged down on what we've just discussed there. The main part of this section is thinking about the powers of the president in the USA. So we're thinking about what powers the president does have in the USA and what powers or what limits are there on the powers of the president in the USA as well. Now you have these 2 pages here in your booklet, which I'll discuss in a moment, which details some of the powers that the US president has, which you'll be finding out more about. Now, one of the main powers the president has is being able to introduce executive action. So a presidential executive order is a directive issued to federal agencies, department heads or other federal employees by the President of the United States under his statutory or constitutional powers. Now, Joe Biden has been very quick in his time in power to actually put in place 17 executive actions straight away. So these are some great examples which you could use in your essays if you were discussing, well, one of the powers of the President is obviously introducing executive orders. Now I'm just going to go over some of the orders here through this slide that Joe Biden has actually introduced since he's come to power. So you'll see it's actually colour coded here, so on the right hand side you've got the lighter green colour is referring to executive orders he's introduced in terms of being related to the coronavirus. He's introduced executive orders to do with the economy, to do with the environment, to do with equality, to do with the census, to do with immigration, quite a few there as well, to do with ethics, and to do with regulation as well. And you'll see the arrows actually symbolise a reversal of Donald Trump's policies. So we'll discuss some of these here. So one of the new orders that he's introduced, the first one there, he's launched a 100 days masking challenge to ask Americans to wear masks for 100 days and requires mass and physical distancing in federal buildings, on federal lands and by government contractors, and urges states and the local governments to do the same. He's also stopped, which is a reversal from Donald Trump's policy, he stopped the United States from withdrawing from the World Health Organization, and he has also created the position of COVID-19 response coordinator, reporting directly to Biden and managing efforts to produce and distribute vaccines and medical equipment. So he's looking to tackle the coronavirus there through 3 executive actions. Other policies he's put in place, you'll be able to read these yourself, but some of the major ones that's been in the news quite recently, he has also rejoined the Paris Climate Accord, which is a major reversal from Donald Trump's policy, who decided to leave the Paris Climate Agreement. So Joe Biden is quite big on tackling climate change, so he has decided to rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement. He's also cancelled the Keystone XL pipeline and directed agencies to review and reverse more than 100 Trump actions on the environment. So quite a change there as well. Other policies that he has introduced as well, he's reversed Donald Trump's policy in terms of restrictions on US entry for passport holders from 7 Muslim majority countries. So he's allowing more immigrants to come into the USA as well. And he's also halted the construction of the border wall by terminating the national emergency declaration used to fund it. So he has reversed quite a few of Donald Trump's policies. So any of these examples would be great to use in your essay in terms of executive orders that have been introduced by Joe Biden. So activity 3, you're looking to take the head in your jot or powers of the President. So you're looking to identify 3 or 4 powers that the President of the United States, POTUS for short, has. You're looking to write these in your jotters using the point, explain, example, analysis format to do this. If you're struggling to find examples, then you can use your phone to research some examples that you could use. So you've got here POTUS, so President of the United States can suggest new policies. If you explain that in more detail, the President can suggest new policies that the government wants to put forward. These policies are often announced at the President's annual State of the Union address to Congress and the American people. For example, President Trump's decision to tighten immigration laws. This shows the US President can suggest policies which may influence others and eventually become law. Now, when you're discussing the powers of the President, although Joe Biden is now in power, he's only been in power for a very short period of time. So when you're thinking about examples, you can use examples from the Trump era if you want to do that for actions that Donald Trump took. Then we've also got the limits on the powers of the President of the USA. So this page in your booklet discusses a wee bit on the limits that the US President has to his power. So for activity 4, you're looking to take down the heading limits on the power of the President, and you're looking to identify at least 3 or 4 ways that the President of the USA has limits on their power. Now try to think of these as like rebuttal points to the powers of the President, which you identified in activity 3, and again try to use examples where possible. So you've got here, point, only Congress can declare war on another country. Explain, even though the US President is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, only Congress has the power to declare war. For example, even when the USA sent troops to Afghanistan, only Congress can declare war. This shows although troops can be sent, only Congress can actually declare a war, showing a limit to the President's power. And then your third question there, activity 4, do you agree that the President of America is the most powerful person in the world? So that's your own opinion there on what you think. Okay, so over to you. What you're looking to upload via Teams for this section is just your answers to the 4 activities there. So activity 1 and 2 were just a bit of background to the US political system. You won't be asked about these in your essay, so please don't worry about that. That's just a wee bit of background to the American political system and how it works. Activity 3, we've got the powers of the President. So when we're doing an essay on this, that would be the first half of your paragraph of your screen, but the powers of the President, and then activity 4, the limits on the powers of the President of the USA. So that would be your rebuttal point in your paragraph. If you have any questions about anything we've discussed in this presentation, please just give myself or Miss McAnally a shout. Thank you very much.